You know that moment when you're sitting at dinner with friends and the check comes and everyone kind of freezes for a second? Like, not because anyone's actually broke, but because there's this mental calculation happening. Can I afford to split this evenly, or do I need to do the awkward thing where I only pay for what I ordered? And then someone just throws down their card without even looking at the total. And you're thinking, man, what does that feel like? To just not care about a $60 dinner bill? That feeling, that specific financial confidence, it doesn't come from making $1 million. It doesn't even come from hitting six figures. It comes from crossing a threshold that most people don't even know exists. And once you cross it, the entire game changes in ways that are honestly hard to explain until you experience it yourself. My name's Robert, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same patterns for decades. And what I've noticed, both in my own life and in watching hundreds of people navigate their finances, is that there's this invisible line at around $20,000 in savings where everything just shifts. Not because $20,000 is some magical number that unlocks secret investment opportunities, or because wealthy people suddenly start taking you seriously. It's deeper than that. It's neurological, it's psychological, and honestly, it might be the most important financial milestone you'll ever hit. If you're someone who wants to understand the real mechanics behind wealth building instead of just hoping things will magically improve, you're going to want to stick around for this, because what I'm about to explain will probably change how you think about every dollar you earn going forward. Here's the thing that nobody really talks about when they're giving financial advice. They'll tell you to save more, invest early, live below your means, all that standard stuff. And sure, that's all technically true. But what they miss is that there are specific moments in your wealth-building journey where the rules completely change, where your brain starts operating differently, where opportunities that were invisible before suddenly become obvious. $20,000 is the first major threshold, and I'm going to tell you exactly why it matters so much more than people realize. Let's start with what's actually happening in your brain when you don't have money saved. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, or maybe you've got a couple $1,000s in the bank, but it's always getting drained by some unexpected expense, your brain is operating in what psychologists call scarcity mode. And this isn't just some abstract concept, it's a real, measurable state where your cognitive function actually changes. Think about it like this. If your house was on fire, could you sit down and plan your dream vacation? Like, could you calmly browse flights and hotels while smoke is filling the room? Of course not. Your brain is entirely consumed by the immediate threat. Every bit of mental energy is focused on survival. That's what financial scarcity does to your thinking. When you don't have a cushion, every financial decision becomes a potential crisis. Your car makes a weird noise, and instead of just taking it to the mechanic, you're running mental calculations about whether you can afford the repair, whether you should put it on a credit card, whether you can risk just ignoring it for another month. Your boss asks you if you can work late, and even though you had plans, you say yes because you can't afford to seem uncooperative. Your friend invites you to a wedding across the country, and you have to make up some excuse about why you can't go because the flight alone would wreck your budget. This isn't just stressful, it's exhausting. And more importantly, it completely prevents you from thinking about growth and opportunity. You can't focus on building wealth when you're constantly putting out financial fires. But here's where it gets really interesting. Research from Vanguard, and this is actual data, not just my opinion, shows that having just $2,000 in emergency savings increases your financial well-being by 21%. $2,000. That's less than most people spend on a vacation. But that small buffer creates a massive psychological shift because it starts moving you out of pure survival mode. Now, when you push that to 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for most people lands somewhere around $20,000, you get another 13% boost in financial well-being. But more importantly, and this is the part that actually matters, you've created enough breathing room for your brain to start thinking differently. Suddenly, you're not asking, how do I survive until next paycheck? You're asking, how can I grow this money?
You're not reactive to whatever crisis pops up. You're proactive about building wealth. And that shift, that mental transformation from defense to offense, that's where everything changes. Let me give you a concrete example of what this looks like in real life. Let's say you're working a job you hate. The boss is a nightmare, the work is boring, and you're pretty sure you're underpaid. But you can't leave because you need the paycheck. You need it desperately. So you smile, you nod, you take on extra work you don't want to do, and you slowly die inside a little bit every day. Now imagine you have $20,000 in the bank. Same terrible job, same awful boss, same boring work, but suddenly the entire dynamic is different because you could quit, like literally tomorrow. You could walk out and you'd be fine for months while you find something better. Now, you probably won't quit. That's not the point. The point is that you could, and that possibility, that option, it changes everything about how you show up to work. You start asking for the raise you deserve because the worst they can say is no, and you'll be fine either way. You push back on unreasonable requests because you're not afraid of the consequences. You explore new opportunities because you can actually afford to take some risks. This is what people mean when they talk about walking away money. It's not about actually walking away. It's about having the power to walk away, which ironically makes you more successful in the thing you're choosing to stay and do. And here's what's really wild. Often, you don't even need to consciously use this leverage. Just having it changes your entire demeanor. You become more confident, more assertive, more willing to take on challenging projects. And guess what happens when you show up differently? People notice. Suddenly, you're getting better assignments, more recognition, and yes, more money. It's this weird positive feedback loop where having money makes it easier to make more money, not because of interest or investments, but because of psychology.
But let's talk about the math for a second, because this is where things get absolutely wild. Let's say you're saving $1,000 every month and earning an 8% return on your investments. Getting to your first $20,000 takes about 19 months of consistent saving and investing, a year and a half of discipline, sacrifice, and delayed gratification. It's not easy. Most people give up somewhere along the way. But here's the part that will absolutely blow your mind. Your second $20,000 doesn't take another 19 months. It only takes about 17 months. Why? Because now you've got that first $20,000 working alongside your monthly contributions, generating its own returns. You did the exact same amount of work, saved the same amount of money each month, took the same level of risk with your investments, but you shaved 2 full months off the timeline just because you had more money working for you. By the time you're going for your third $20,000, the timeline shrinks even more. And when you get to the really big numbers, the acceleration becomes almost comical. Once you hit $400,000 in your investment portfolio, you can generate your next $20,000 in just 5 months. The same amount that took you nearly 2 years to save initially is now happening automatically through your investments. That first milestone feels impossible, but every milestone after that gets progressively easier. This is why people who build wealth often seem like they're playing a completely different game, because they are. They've crossed enough thresholds that momentum is doing most of the work. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what about people who just blow that $20,000 the second they hit it? And yeah, this happens all the time. Someone saves up 20 grand, feels that psychological shift, and then immediately rewards themselves with a new car, or an expensive vacation, or a down payment on a house they can't really afford. And look, I get it. After months or years of discipline, you want to celebrate. You want something to show for all that sacrifice. But here's the thing. That $20,000 is not a reward for good behavior. It's the foundation of your entire financial future. It's the seed that grows into generational wealth if you're patient enough to let it compound. Think about what you're actually trading off. That $30,000 car isn't just $30,000, it's $30,000 that could have grown to over $200,000 in your investment account over 20 years. Are you really telling me that having a slightly nicer car right now is worth $200,000 of future wealth? Because that's the actual choice you're making, whether you realize it or not.
This is where having $20,000 saved completely changes your perspective on major purchases. Instead of thinking, can I afford the monthly payment, you start thinking, what is this really costing me in terms of opportunity? And suddenly, driving a reliable used car doesn't feel like a sacrifice anymore. It feels like a strategic choice that's funding your future freedom. But here's what I think is the most underrated benefit of crossing this threshold. You stop sweating the small stuff. When you're broke, you obsess over every purchase. Should I buy the name brand cereal or the generic version? Is it worth spending $3 on coffee when I could make it at home? These micro decisions consume mental energy because every dollar feels precious. But when you have a solid financial foundation, you realize these decisions are largely irrelevant. The difference between spending $3 on coffee versus making it at home is maybe $1,000 per year if you're really going overboard. That's not nothing, but it's not going to make or break your financial future either. What matters are the big decisions: where you live, what you drive, how much you save, where you invest. These choices can swing your net worth by tens of thousands of dollars over time. So instead of agonizing over whether to buy the organic bananas, you focus your energy on optimizing your housing costs, maximizing your income, and making sure your investment strategy is solid. This shift in focus is incredibly liberating because it frees up mental bandwidth for the decisions that actually matter. You stop feeling guilty about small pleasures and start thinking strategically about the big stuff. And honestly, this is what wealthy people actually do. They're not sitting around clipping coupons or stressing about whether they can afford a latte. They've got the big stuff dialed in, and everything else is just noise. Once you hit that $20,000 threshold, you can start operating the same way. Look, $20,000 isn't going to make you rich overnight. It's not going to solve all your problems or unlock some secret level of financial society, but it will fundamentally change how you think about money, work, and opportunity. It's the difference between surviving and thriving, between reacting to life and actually designing it. And the beautiful thing is, it's actually achievable. Not easy, but achievable. If you can save $1,000 a month, you're looking at less than 2 years to get there. Even if you can only save $500 a month, that's still just 3 years. 3 years to completely transform your financial psychology and set yourself up for exponential growth from that point forward. Start building that foundation today, not because some finance bro on the internet told you to, but because your future self is literally counting on the decision you make right now. They're sitting there, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, and they're either thanking you for having the discipline to build that foundation, or they're wondering why you didn't start when you had the chance. Trust me, they'll thank you for it.